Good morning, friends. Jill here. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. Today is garden tour day. I'm so excited. We've had a nice rainfall this morning, so it's beautiful overcast, the perfect time to shoot this video. It just feels so good. We have had a lot of rain lately. However, I'm really glad because everything in the garden looks amazing. I've not had to water, and so it's been really nice. You know, last week we had the rain every day. This week we've had it kind of every other day, which has been nice. I have went through and planted some things. I'm curious to see if they'll be popping up yet, but the garden is looking full. I mean, things are happening in the garden. I cannot wait to show you guys, so let's do it. I am still dealing with my pest pressure. Rooster, I am trying to shoot a garden tour. Every time I go to talk, that stinker just starts crowing. So I am still dealing with pests. However, I have been treating it. It does seem to be getting better, but I did run into my first squash bugs in the garden, and so I know that that is something I'm gonna have to be really diligent with. Speaking of squash, these guys are growing so much and starting to trellis, so I'm just trying to help them. You can see they've already latched on over here. So I just try to go in, because I get asked this a lot with my tromboncino. I do take it and just try to encourage it to go up. So we do have the center cut squash baby. It's the cross between the tromboncino and just a regular zucchini. We've got some blooms on this. Now, someone did ask me, is this normal for the leaves of a tromboncino this color? Now, obviously, this is some sort of like issue, but traditionally tromboncino leaves do look like this right here, and that's not a disease. That's just how the leaves are on these types of plants. We have several squash in here that are starting to get big, which is really encouraging. I feel like we'll be eating squash soon. You guys can see though, this plant is just filled with aphids, and so, I mean, I'm trying to work, you know, and fix that problem. This is just something that happens every year with our squash, so I'm just trying to be diligent and coming out and taking off all these aphids, all the squash bugs as I see them. We have our round zucchini, which is doing great. This is actually the first time that I have grown this, and I am really excited. I'm excited to taste it. It's so cute. So I know that that's silly, but I just think it's just the cutest little zucchini, and so I'm really excited for that. And it looks like I've got another one over there. These plants have actually done really well. So overall, my little squash and zucchini bed is doing really well. I did go through, and back there where there's a space, I added another zucchini, and I added another one right here because I assumed that I would be having to rip these up fairly soon, and then those would be popping up and we could kind of just have that succession sowing. You guys can see the little sunflower that Nathan planted there is doing really good as well. So I get asked often, how do you deal with squash bugs? What does that look like for you? Why even grow squash? It's so bad here, and I have read so many of your guys' comments saying that you guys are already dealing with them too. I actually had a guy at the gym ask me last night, like, hey, what do I do about squash bugs? You guys know I just hand pick them. That's literally what I do. I could spray for the aphids, soapy water, something like that. But I go into the season prepared to succession sow, and that is by either starting them from seed and transplanting them out, that way that they're big enough when I, you know, rip those out of the garden, or in this case, I just went ahead and planted more. And as I see that they're starting to set fruit and that they're getting overtaken and the fruit's dying back, I'm just going to rip out that plant and hopefully already have one in its place, which is what I would recommend for you to do as well. You can do this with your cucumbers, you know, like you can immediately take out your cucumbers, resow them. We typically, which this year's different, y'all, because I'm having the hardest time with my cucumbers. But in years past, I would do 2 cucumber sessions in the summer, and then I would sow late summer and have cucumbers into the fall. And so that is something that I've just kind of wrapped my head around, is I'm gonna have to be succession sowing. I'm going to know that things aren't gonna live long just because of heat, pests, disease, whatever, and just be prepared to rip those out and resow something new. So something I resowed the other day were sunflowers. Nathan had went through and planted me all these sunflowers, and not all of them popped up, which was totally fine. A lot of them did. I just went through and reseeded some. I highly doubt that they're popping up yet because I just resowed them like maybe a couple days ago. Look at these little guys though. These are doing really good. We do have some pest damage. That is pretty typical for our sunflowers. But we've got lots of these little guys popping up, which is really encouraging. You guys can see all the way down there. We've got them lined up over there. So I just went through where you can see the bare spots, and that's pretty much where I just filled in. And if you guys remember this little trellis system I threw in the corner of this bed to plant cucamelons, and I am happy to report that little cucamelons are popping up. I even saw one, where was it? There it is. Right over there. Look at that. Isn't that so exciting? So even though I don't just love cucamelons, I think this will be a really fun little thing for whoever moves in here. So I know I mentioned in the past, I'm not the biggest fan of cucamelons, but I think that they're really fun to grow. And when I say I'm not the biggest fan, like I will eat them, my kids will eat them. It's not something that we could preserve easily. We tried to pickle them, or we tried to can them and they just got really mushy. I think it might actually be fun to try and ferment them. And so I just had a really hard time. I was so committed, y'all, like for years on growing cucamelons, and I just could not do it successfully. And then when I did, like the hype wasn't there, right? And so it's not that I don't like cucamelons. I will eat cucamelons. When I went to Jess's the other day, she was like, I know you don't love cucamelons, but I planted some. I'm like, no, I mean, if they reseed and it's easy, yes, but for as much work as I was putting into it, I was getting really disappointed because I was like, oh, this is what all of this is about. But I do think that they're a very unique thing to have in your garden. And if you're not familiar with a cucamelon, it's this little cross between a cucumber and a watermelon, but it has a really hard shell. So it's like biting into the rind of a watermelon, which is what I think I don't enjoy, but it is sweeter than a cucumber. And they're super neat, like they're so cool. But I think this year, if these are producing when we're still here, I think I want to try and ferment some, because if I fermented them and then cut them in half and then just kind of toss them on something that we were eating, maybe a salad, I think that would be really refreshing. And I'm curious if I ferment them, if their outside shell is going to stay hard, because anytime I ferment anything else, it's still hard and crunchy. It never gets soggy. And so I think that's an experiment that I want to play around with, because that would actually be pretty cool. So I want to head over here and show you the garlic. The garlic is starting to put off scapes, which I've been pinching off just to kind of redirect the energy back down into finishing off producing the bulb. Some of the tops are starting to fall over, and so I'm waiting to harvest all of that. Usually what I do is the scapes are kind of a pretty good sign for me. Then when the leaves start falling, but I still wait until the outer leaves are turning brown, and that's usually a good indication to me that the garlic's ready. I did plant my garlic. We did a video on it, but I planted it kind of late, and so I don't think I'm quite ready to harvest yet, but I am looking forward to that. You guys can see here, we've actually been cooking with these, so I've just been pinching them off. You can see I've went through and taken a bunch of these off. There are still some coming right here. They taste amazing. Alright, that'd go really good in a breakfast omelet. I'm going to stick these in my pocket. Hopefully I won't forget about them. So that is kind of the first step that I look for on when my garlic's ready. But they're getting huge. Look how big these plants are. You guys can see my lettuce is doing great with the rain. I'm trying to eat this up more just because the days have been hot and it's tasting kind of bitter. We actually have some friends coming into town this weekend, which I'm so excited for. So we'll probably just be eating lots of like fresh salads. My spinach is starting to no longer look that great, which I actually expect. When it's getting this hot, usually things are just starting to bolt, so it doesn't actually surprise me that this is what the spinach is doing. So I'm just trying to go through and use up as much as I can before it all just starts bolting and looking really bad. Down here though, my red leaf lettuce is doing amazing. I did tell you guys that it was a little bit bitter. Look at those colors, it's so beautiful. Now my celery is looking like celery, folks. Look at that. Oh my goodness, you guys knew this is one of the things that I was just so excited for this year, and it's showing off. It is making me proud. And so these guys have just been super low maintenance, and they're thriving. I mean, they're just doing so well. So that is really, really encouraging. Someone had asked me the other day what I was most excited to grow in my garden this year and what I was most looking forward to that Jess was growing. So I think that the celery is one of the things that I am most looking forward to in the garden this year, and the center cut squash, because I love Tremoncino, I love zucchini. I just think like that cross would just be so magical. I'm literally just like envisioning how magical that would be. Plus it's a new variety, and that obviously excites me. But then the celery, just because on a practical level we use a lot of celery this time of year. And I guess that when I thought of celery, I just thought it would be complicated, it would be hard to grow. I can tell you right now, for me personally, I'm in zone 7B. I'm in central Arkansas. This has been so low maintenance, and I've had zero pests. It's always encouraging growing something that you're not dealing with pests, right? So like with the squash and zucchini, sometimes it's easy to get discouraged that you're growing something, you're putting all your energy and your time into it, and then squash bugs take it out, or maybe you have aphids or whatever that may look like. And so I always try to encourage beginner gardeners, first time gardeners, grow something easy. Grow something that is pest tolerant to some extent. Is that even a thing, right? I don't know. But I will tell you that my celery has had no pest damage. I've had no issues. It has just been such a joy to grow this. And so I think that this is my favorite thing. As far as Jessica's, I don't really know, because I don't know what all she has in her garden. I know that the flowers, I obviously have this romantic idea of these flowers, and so the cottage garden is just overwhelmingly beautiful. When you go out there and you see all these different textures and these different colors that serve all these different purposes, all the herbs, I love the idea of that. I really just have a vision of how that space is going to be for me, and so I am looking forward to that. As far as food, I don't really know what she's going to have in her garden by the time I get there, and so that'll be one of those things that I'll probably have to give a follow-up later, but I am excited for what all she has. So my dahlias are looking beautiful. They've grown so much. I mean, look how huge this plant is. They're a little bit harder to keep these in the squares because they're a fuller, bushier flower. But if you guys can see over here, we are starting to get little bulbs. You guys were very, very helpful as far as the difference in dahlia tubers and from seeds and what that looks like. So thank you for all of that advice. We have our giant zinnias over here, which are giant. I mean, they are just so big. This guy is starting to want to develop a pretty little bloom. And so I'm excited. I mean, check out that guy. Look how pretty. Yeah, I'm super excited. I think I'd mentioned to you guys several times before too, this row of zinnias were doing amazing. Very little pest damage. Just were doing great. I actually see some zinnia blooms down here. We'll go. And then this is the side that I was really struggling with, which just has to be a deficiency. Oh my goodness, check that out. This will be my first zinnia bloom. I've got another one right here. So that's awesome. These are all looking way better too, just since pinching them, it allowed them to just have some new growth. I do still have some like this, where this is where it's starting to put off those side shoots that look great. But you guys can see down here, I'm still dealing with just some leaves that don't look that great. I went into this having zero expectations for my zinnia bed, because I knew I was going to have grace with myself, because I knew I'd never grown zinnias on this scale. Usually I just threw them in the garden somewhere, never really worried about spacing, just would, you know, willy-nilly sow them in the garden. And this year I wanted to have them for cut flowers, but I knew if I put that pressure on myself, then things might go wrong and then I might get disappointed. Some of my zinnias look awful. I mean, all of the foliage has completely died on them. And I'm going to twist this to be a good thing, because when my friend came out here and showed me how to pinch the zinnias, he told me that I had put too many in here. And so I'm just looking at it like that. Well, the ones that everything's died on and they don't look great, I'm just gonna rip them up from the soil. I'm not actually gonna compost these because I don't actually know what is wrong with them. And so that's one thing, if you pull up some sort of diseased plant, you wanna like burn that. You don't really wanna put that in your compost to just spread disease. And since I'm not actually sure what's going on with these zinnias, I'm gonna pull them up and I'm just gonna burn them. Burn the plants. We have, you know, a pile that we burn stuff in anyway, so it's not gonna be that big of a deal. And then I'm just gonna allow more space for the good zinnias that are doing well. And so that's just something I like to do. Find the positives. If something's going crummy in your garden, what is something that's going good? Really focus and emphasize on that just to keep your spirits up. Y'all know I'm all about finding that one thing that's gonna spark joy and grow that in abundance. And these zinnias are sparking joy. And so I'm not gonna get discouraged when something's not going right, when it's a soil issue. Soil, there's so much packed into soil, right? Like, we could spend years and years diving into soil and there's still things we don't have figured out. And so this is just something that I know I need to keep diving deeper and keep figuring out. And so for me, that's encouraging because it's an opportunity to learn, and y'all know I really like that. But I came over here and guess what? I mean, it's been well over a month ago. Well over a month ago, I started ginger in the greenhouse with you guys, and this bad boy is starting to sprout. Check out that little sprout. That is so awesome. So I have this literally just laying on the surface. I didn't really plant it deep, but I guess all this rain, it is really enjoying. So that is so amazing. This is actually the ginger, the same ginger that we planted in the high tunnel out at Jess's. Looks like there's another sprout right here starting to happen. So that's incredible. Here is one of my favorite little buckets in the garden. It's not even in the garden, it's in this little work table I have. But this is the lettuce leaf basil, which I have been so impressed with. I will grow this every year. And then we have these nasturtiums that are doing wonderful, starting to put off a bloom. I think this is the jewel peach. These nasturtiums are doing great. My basil keeps wanting to bolt on me, and so, oh, here are my pruners. I've been going through just pruning these just to really encourage it not to go to flower. This is the lime basil. I'm actually probably gonna take this inside and just throw it in my water. But that is something I do anytime I start to see the flowers happening or that the plant is getting really tall. I'll just go through and pinch it off or clip it off just to really try to get the longevity of my basil plants, because if you don't prune them, they're gonna go to seed. I can't believe my ginger sprouted. That is like such a victory for me. Yo, I grew ginger. Well, okay, that's probably that's probably a step ahead. I started ginger and it sprouted, and that is worth celebrating. Here are my Chinese noodle beans that are doing really well. You guys can see they're starting to pop up nicely and get some height on them. So I'm hoping they'll just take off and be climbing really soon. I have them on this side as well. However, the pest damage is pretty bad, so I'm gonna have to be much more diligent about spraying. I'm just gonna put diatomaceous earth around the base of all of these, which I did do. However, the rain washed it all off, so I'm just gonna reapply that. My determinate tomatoes are doing great. I actually have a pretty large tomato back there. I'll have to show you from the other side. These are looking green. These are looking great. I'm not having any issues with them. Check out that tomato. That is so exciting. So a lot of my determinate varieties are just loaded with them like this, and I could not be more thrilled. I have all of the daikon radishes starting to come up, which Nathan is going to be super excited for. Yeah, so you see that nice purple. They're definitely not where they need to be. I'm going to cover this guy back up, but that is encouraging. And so far, the pests haven't done just a ton of damage on these. So in this bed behind me, I have got my second bed full of determinate varieties, which I still have not figured out a trellising system for. I thought I was gonna do the Florida weave, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing. However, I don't have the materials on hand. I have not had time to go get those materials. And I'm trying to wait and harvest all of this Savinova lettuce. So this lettuce had completely bolted. I'd pulled it out this morning, and I need to go through and just take the lettuce out around these tomato plants, and then it'll be easier for me to set up the Florida weave system. The only thing about the Florida weave trellising is that It's not one of those systems that is an easy approach. It is a good approach, but you are going to have to continuously be going out there and weaving tomato twine around your plants as they begin to grow, especially if you're growing some sort of variety that puts on just these large, heavy fruits. It is a great method. We used it in the tunnel, but I just want to make sure that that is the right method for me here. The only other option we could do is get a cattle panel and some T-posts and tie these to them. But since we're moving, I don't know that that makes the most sense. So I probably will end up doing it, just haven't done it yet. They don't really seem fazed by the lack of support right now, but check out that tomato. I mean, yes, I am so excited. So they're looking amazing. You can tell their color's green and lush. We're putting on more clusters, so I could not be more pleased. Over here, we've got the tromboncino squash. Check out these nasturtiums after a rainstorm in the morning. These are so pretty. I definitely think my idea of the nasturtium and the tromboncino, I'm starting to envision it, and it's gonna be great. Check out that little pepper. That's a big pepper for a little pepper plant. You guys can see we have got radishes just popping up everywhere. I will be definitely fermenting some of these for Nathan soon. Y'all see just back there all of that color. That really is exciting. Once I rip these up, I'm just going to keep re-sowing until it's too hot and I can't. Check out those blueberry cherries. Look at there. That is my first Cherokee purple from the variegated Cherokee purple. That is so cool. So this bed right here, you guys can see, is just lush and green and full. Everything a gardener wants to see in their garden. Check out those scarlet runner beans. I cannot wait to have these. They're putting off so many blooms. I'm so encouraged. Check out those fava beans. These have lots of blooms on them. They look really pretty. There's another little pepper plant with a little guy on there. These are all the ones that I didn't have tags for, so they're just kind of mystery peppers. My black from Tula tomato. Putting on lots of fruit. Got an entire cluster right here. That's amazing. We got more blueberry cherries. So some things, as you can see, are going bananas in the garden. I mean, I'm so impressed with just how good my tomatoes ended up being. I was really nervous. They were looking really bad there for a second. I got them on some support. I ended up kind of combating with the pests temporarily. The rainwater helped a ton. I've got my squash and zucchini that are doing great. Some of my flowers are starting to come back. Right now, I am feeling extremely, extremely encouraged by the garden. I hope you guys are enjoying your gardens as much as I'm enjoying mine. I hope you are celebrating the victories. I was talking with a friend last night and we were discussing how this is hard, right? The lifestyle that we choose to live is hard. And so you really have to just embrace all of those victories and soak in those wins a little bit more. That way you can go back and reference those on the hard days. And that is what the garden is to me. When I see these, tomatoes starting to set on the vine, when I see the green beans starting to make little beans, when I see flowers blooming, those are the things that I just relish in, and those are the things that get me through the hard days. I encourage you guys to find that one thing on your farm, in your garden, on your homestead that you just really latch onto, and it is the driving factor that gets you through the hard days. But thanks for hanging out with me today as we toured the garden on this beautiful, lovely morning, and I'll talk to you guys soon.